Hi, I'm James the Light Guy, and today we're going to find out if any of these bulbs will work frozen in a block of ice. For today's experiment, we have a bread tin. We're going to use that as our basin, and we're going to use these skewers to make a frame to suspend the bulbs in the water. First, we're going to take 3 skewers and line them up across the short way to figure out how long we need to trim them. Ideally, you should use snips for this experiment, but I didn't have any on hand, so we're using scissors. Once we have all 3 cut, we'll figure out our approximate spacing and grab one of our long skewers for support. Then we will attach them using bread ties. If you enjoy the content on my channel, consider subscribing. I upload 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm also always looking for suggestions on how to improve my channel, so if you have any comments or questions, leave them down below for me. I do really appreciate any input I get from you guys. Alright, before we attach our second skewer, we're going to line up our bulb. Our first bulb is from Rover. It is their H1 bulb. We'll twist this on, and we're going to try and make sure that we secure it with enough of a drop so that it's not touching the bottom of the pan but will be covered by the water. Next, we have our CarWorks box LED. That one was a very popular video. I'm going to put a link to each of these in the description below. You can see my full review on each bulb there. Again, we don't want them touching each other and don't want them touching the sides or bottom of the bin. Last is our S&D 8-sided LED. It's the same design as the 2 Auto and Light Moses design. All are very popular and personally my favorite bulbs so far that I have tested. Once we have them all spaced out, we're going to grab some distilled water. Hopefully freezing the distilled water will give us a clear ice block. We're going to carefully pour that up till it's past all of the bulbs. We've now got the bulbs completely submerged. And we can take these and put them in the freezer. We'll be back in just a moment. Alright, it's been a few days and it's frozen solid. Clearly something went terribly wrong with the distilled water, and instead of freezing clear, we have a cloudy mess. But it will still work for our experiment because we know which bulb was which. We have the Rover, CarWorks box, and S&D bulbs. We have to get this frame off, but first let's clean up the area. Once we get all the twist ties off, we can remove the frame, and the ice block slides right out of our bread tin. As we can see, the bulbs are completely encased in the block. Luckily, they stayed at least somewhat in place and didn't fall out. First, let's grab our Rover terminals and hook them up to our power supply. Turning on our power supply, you can see at 14.4 volts, we are drawing about 2.5 2.5, we'll round down, 2.5 amps. That is slowly dropping, and the bulb is still working. I can assure you that the fan is not spinning, but right now in a block of ice, cooling isn't super important. Next, we'll grab our CarWorks box LED, and we'll hook up the terminals to that. You can see this one's drawing just over 3 amps. And there was a little whine of the fan trying to start, but clearly couldn't move since it's frozen solid. We've dropped down to almost exactly 3 amps and still continuing to drop, but let's check out the S&D bulb. I'm going to fold this over so it doesn't short out because those terminals are pretty close together. Alright, this one is at 2.3 amps and very, very bright. Not sure if it shows up on camera or not, but it is the brightest bulb in the pack. Alright, clearly all 3 bulbs do work while this cold. I think the next logical step is to see how long they last before they fail. So, with that in mind, let's go back to our first car Rover, and we'll plug it in, and we'll see what happens. Alright, at this point it's been about 10 minutes of being on, and both sides of the LED are still going bright. That was me, I just unclipped the wire, clip it back on. Struggling, there we go. And as you can see, both sides still work. My camera's having trouble picking up a stable amount of brightness and focus. It's actually really tough to film ice with lights inside. Who would have guessed? Try turning down the brightness a little bit, see if we can get that any better. You can see that they are fully encased in ice. I was expecting some of the water or ice to melt into water and it to build pressure up and shatter the ice, but the bulbs aren't getting hot enough to melt enough water. Alright, let's switch over to the CarWorks box LED. You can see that this one is also very bright. It's at a slightly different angle in the ice, but both sides are illuminated. Actually, it looks really cool in my opinion. I'm kind of biased. I love lights. And that ice is really cold. We're gonna let this sit for a while and come back on it and check in on it later. Alright, it may not have looked like much, but we just skipped forward about another 10 minutes, and again, pretty much nothing has changed. The LEDs inside are still functional, and they haven't heated up enough to melt the ice. We're going to let it run for a little while longer. You can see we just had a little bit of movement over by the car Rover LED. Another little crack. Let's give it some more time and see if anything else changes. While we're watching this time lapse, I want to give a shout out to WeldorGuy. He has his own YouTube channel, and I'm going to put a link to it in the description, as well as a card on screen now. On his channel, he does a lot of things that interest him. They're all fairly short videos, but very entertaining. He got a set of the 2 auto bulbs I recommended, but one of his had a failure. That failure sparked this whole series about stress testing these bulbs to see if maybe the cold climate that he lives in could have caused the failure. Go check out his channel, and if you enjoy his content, consider subscribing. We've now had the CarWorks box on for a half hour in this block of ice. The current draw has dropped from 3 amps down to 2.5, but brightness, at least by eye, I didn't measure it before, doesn't appear to have significantly decreased, and we haven't seen any more cracking or structural changes in the block of ice itself. So, it seems like now is as good a time as any to start our conclusion. The Car Rover CarWorks box and our third bulb, which is the S&D or 2 Auto or Light Moses design, all seem to work under normal circumstances, barring manufacturer defects, even when frozen solid in a block of ice. That is to say, even with the cooling fan frozen solid. I wish I could have found out what the little brain box is thinking with the fan unable to turn, but it doesn't appear to affect cooling since, well, they're in a block of ice. In any case, that's all I have for today's video. If you have any comments or questions, leave them down below for me. Please subscribe to my channel. And until next time, I'm James the Light Guy.